Hi, Martins Sulte here, and in this video you will hear about my interview that I did with Martins Sulte, who is the CEO of Mintos. So, as you might know, Mintos is my favorite platform when it comes to peer-to-peer lending. That's where I have the most of my money invested. That's the one I recommend, for example, on my website, but also to family, to friends, when they ask me about investing. So it's really a platform I believe in. That's the biggest platform in Europe at the moment. So I really wanted to talk to Martins about many topics like peer-to-peer lending in general. We also went over a lot of questions that are related to the COVID-19 crisis that we are still in the middle of it as I recorded this interview. So you will also hear some really nice insight about what they are doing about the crisis, how they actually handle it. I also asked him about the problem of pending payments on the platform, so you will hear about that as well. And finally, more at the end of this interview, we talked about topics like regulation and also where he thinks the whole field is going, and also some upcoming features that you will find in the future on the Mintos platform. So you will find all of that inside the interview. So without further ado, let's go directly into the interview that I did with Martins Sulte, who is the CEO of Mintos. So yes, thank you so much for joining into this interview. Mintos is really the platform that I use, for a long time, and that I actually recommend always first to all my subscribers, also my friends. So I'm really happy to talk to you today. So to start, can you just introduce yourself and Mintos?
Sure, Marco. Thank you for having me. So my name is Martins. I'm CEO and the co-founder of Mintos. We've been around for some time, as you say. So perhaps we are one of the largest players today. So what we do, it's marketplace for investing in loans. So we bring a new alternative investment type to retail investors in a very short introduction.
Yeah, awesome. So I propose to do like in three different parts this interview.
Sure.
One will be all about really peer-to-peer lending. Then we'll go more into questions from my audience, which are mostly about the virus crisis at the moment, but that's the situation we are in at the moment. And the last part will be more about the future of the field.
Okay, cool.
So first, let's talk about peer-to-peer lending. So when I started to invest years ago, I really found the usual investment advice, like invest in real estate, or invest in the stock market, or invest, put it on like a typical savings account, which doesn't get you any money. And then I found peer-to-peer lending. So how do you think peer-to-peer lending is actually either better or at least different from those more typical asset classes?
I think when we think about the peer-to-peer lending, or more broadly, I would put it loans as an investment type. We think that it is alternative investment type. So it is alternative to more traditional asset classes, such as the same stocks, of course, the same bonds, or just keeping your money in a savings account. So you have another alternative investment type. So we bring in Mintos, so we bring a new alternative investment type to retail investors. I think the difference, obviously, all asset classes are different, right? So you can compare them in different ways, across different verticals. When it comes to loans, so the key perhaps is that it's fixed instrument type of investment. So it's basically debt instrument. So that means that when you invest in loans, so you invest capital and then you get interest rate back on your capital. So whenever the borrowers make a repayment, you get back your capital. You also earn the interest, which is obviously different, for instance, if you do invest in stocks. I think when it comes to loans, and especially to Mintos, so the key things which stand out is that you can start very small, and build a very diversified portfolio. So when you start on Mintos, you can start from just 10 euros, and even with 100 euros or 200 euros, you already can build a rather diversified and good portfolio. So you can start small, so it's accessible. And at the end of the day, it's actually, while as a concept is new that you can invest in loans, so it's still new relative to kind of stock market. It's actually very straightforward. So you're basically just giving a loan to somebody, well, buying a part in that loan, and when the borrower makes a repayment, you get back your capital and the interest rate. So it's actually fairly straightforward. And then it offers you asset which is not correlated with other assets necessarily. So when you look, yes, sure, there is some correlation, but in general, especially so on Mintos, when you have so wide offering of different loans, so you're gonna have loan which is originated in, I don't know, Mexico, you're gonna have a loan originated in the Botswana, you're gonna loan originated in Poland, or a loan originated in, say, Indonesia. And even with such a big crisis or such big kind of impact as a COVID, which affects the whole world, it still doesn't behave the same. And it also doesn't necessarily behave the same as you would see with the stock market or with the bond market. So there's less correlation is something also what I think is kind of the strong part of this alternative investment type, that it's not correlated with other assets out there.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I think you already touched a bit actually on the next question, but how would you say that Mintos is different from the other platforms out there? Because as you know, there are many different offering on the market in terms of peer-to-peer lending platforms. So what makes Mintos different?
I think first, actually, we don't really consider ourselves a P2P player, like peer-to-peer lending platform, because we don't lend. So instead, we position ourselves as a marketplace for investing in loans. And the loan supply, which is available in the marketplace, is brought by lending companies. So that's a key difference, actually, to our what we would consider indirect competitors, some of the older platforms or like typical P2P platforms, is that the loan supply is brought by those lending companies, which we basically partner with in specific countries. So today we have around 60 different lending companies which originate loans in 33 countries, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, as an offering on Mintos, it's very unmatched offering. So the loan supply which you get on the Mintos is like provides you significant opportunities to diversify. So that will be the key difference and the major actually selling point for our platform is that you can come on Mintos, you can really pick and choose loans which suit your preferences the most, as opposed to more typical to the typical P2P platforms where you usually will have loans which are originated just by the platform, most likely just in one country, and that's going to be just one loan type. So on Mintos, as I said, there's like 60 different lending companies, 33 different countries. I think it's 8 different loan types, so from small consumer loans up to small business loans and so forth. So this unmatched supply is something which really sets us apart from other offerings out there.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's also what I love on Mintos. That's why I recommend to so many people that you can really diversify very easily in so many different countries, different originators, right? Talking about like investing, let's now imagine we are a very like beginner investor that doesn't really know actually about peer-to-peer lending. And what the question I always receive in my audience for somebody that doesn't know peer-to-peer lending is that, for example, if you invest in real estate, right, you can actually see the house or the apartment or something. If you invest in the stock market, you know the companies, right? Like Microsoft, big companies, right? So, but people ask me in peer-to-peer lending, if I invest in a loan, right, or many loans, what is actually my guarantee that I will actually ever, see my money back? So what would you have to say to that, to really a beginner investor?
Yeah, I think to the very beginners, first of all, we would really make it clear that investing in loans is an investment. So as an investment, it carries risk that the capital that you might you lose your capital or part of your capital. And that's actually important to emphasize, because as a beginner, perhaps some people try to compare it to deposits, which are savings product, and you don't expect to put any risk on the savings product. So basically, like, your expected risk there is zero. Whereas investments in loans is an investment, so you put your capital at risk, but for that you get much higher interest rates, right? So that's the first thing which we would definitely put out there, so that you cannot compare it to savings product. So it is investment product, and as an investment product, all investments do carry a risk. So that's something which definitely has to be emphasized. When it comes to getting back your capital and earning interest on that, it really comes down, I think, for very beginners, is to diversify. It's really to diversify, pick a very diversified portfolio. I say, I don't know, build a portfolio of even 20 loans or 30 loans. Start small if you want to. You can build also hundreds loans. And if you look at for instance, of a portfolio of 100 loans, yes, maybe like 5 loans not going to perform, and they're not going to return back the capital which they bought outright, but then 95 loans going to continue performing, and you're going to earn interest on those, which should cover this potential loss of capital in those 5 which don't actually perform. So really diversify and look at more on a portfolio basis is something which we would also advise to those who are just starting.
Yep, awesome. Thank you for this answer. So now I want to go to some specific question from my audience. So I sent a message to, I put it via email. I sent an email about that. I also asked in my Facebook group if people had questions about Mintos. And I compiled the 3 most common questions that we'll go over now. So the first one, it's really about the current COVID crisis. So what are the specific plans from the Mintos side to protect the investors' money during this crisis?
I think it really comes down to at the performance of the loans. And that's what we also saw with the lending companies. I mean, we ourselves, we don't lend the money, so we don't make a decision, should we lend the money to this borrower or that borrower. So that's done by the lending company. So our job is to make sure that the lending companies are doing good job on that. So, and that's what we also saw in the COVID crisis. So when the crisis hit, so lending companies actually reduced their lending. They refocused the lending on less risky client segments, and then maybe didn't issue loans to more risky segments. So that's I think the key there is really to look at the underlying loans and how those are originated. So that's what we will continue doing. And we'll do. Having said that, of course, we have to realize that in lending, so as a lending itself, it is expected that some loans not going to be repaid. So that's just part of lending. So the question then comes down is how much of this expected default you can have. So and when the crisis hit, sure, the number for loans not performing will increase. And as long as they're actually within the range of expected default, which basically can be covered by your interest earnings, and that's still a good investment, right? Even though there might be more defaults along the way. And that's also what we see, I guess, in the COVID crisis, is that yes, those defaults increase, but we see that on a portfolio basis, the expected default is still very reasonable. And with the economy getting back to growth and the pandemic subsiding, so we would expect that those defaults are actually gonna go down. So that's just part of lending. So when the economic crisis hit, you're always gonna have more defaults. So when the recovery picks up, then they tend to go back to more long-term levels.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. The second question that was from my audience is really more specific and more common, I guess, from people that are already invested in Mintos. People are pointing out, or even complaining, you could say, that a significant amount of some people's portfolio on Mintos are kind of now stuck in those pending payments, right? So what are your comments on that, or what does Mintos plan to address this issue at the moment?
Technically correct would be stuck in recovery. So we are working on recovery. So we have a portfolio which is in recovery. So for various reasons, the loans end up in recovery. And that as well, so we have to look on a portfolio basis. So we cannot just throw out the numbers and say it's significant or not significant. Everything is relative. So when you look on the portfolio basis, so we now have in recovery around 15% of the portfolio, which was at the peak, is now still in the recovery. Of that, we expect that we will perhaps recover half of it or so. So potentially on the portfolio basis, investors would look at the capital loss in 2020 at something like 7-8%,
Right.
which is obviously, again, we have to take it into the context that over the first 5 years when we were operating, there were no capital loss at all. So, and investors were earning 12%, 13, 15% interest rates. So, and then if you combine that, then still over the 5-6 years we've been operating, the net return would come down to the 10%. Sure, the caveat is that we've seen, and well, it's unfortunate, of course, that as with any other form of investing, timing is crucial. So if you would invest in in stock market in late 2006 or early 2007, and then wake up at the end of 2008, well, you also would see that your portfolio is reduced in value significantly. Likewise, unfortunately, some investors started, those investors who started in 2019, so they didn't have those 5 years to generate profit. So they see now that part of the capital is in recovery and part of it will be capital at loss, right? And then coming back to what we discussed a bit already about diversification, what we see also is, unfortunately, not all investors have diversified. So on average, actually, a very well-diversified investor should look at 8% of capital at loss after all the recoveries. So it means that if you invest 1,000 euros, you would potentially lose in 2020 80 euros of that. And then, well, hopefully, and the crisis, well, most likely not going to repeat itself all the time. So you should get back to earning interest. So it should be a relatively small part of capital loss. But the problem is, or the issue which we see, is that many investors are actually not that well diversified, unfortunately. So they end up with buying loans which end up in recovery. And well, unfortunately, we see those cases which you referred to, that some of them do have rather significant part of their portfolio in recovery. Nevertheless, our job doesn't change. Our job is to do our best to recover as much as possible. But of course, we also realize that we're not going to be able to recover 100% of the exposure at risk, and which would be great if we could. But then also, again, I'm kind of coming back to the context question. We have to put into the context that when you earn double-digit returns, then, well, perhaps when the crisis hits, you would not expect that there is no defaults whatsoever. So there will be some defaults, of course. Sure, if investors would invest at 3% or 4% and earn like 3-4% interest rate, by no means we would expect that there's no defaults whatsoever in the crisis. But when you invest at double-digit returns, it's inevitable that with the economic up cycles and down cycles, there's going to be also potential defaults.
Okay. Yep. Thanks a lot for this answer. So the last question for the audience was more about the future, I would say. So there's a lot of talk in the crowd lending, peer-to-peer lending space at the moment about more transparency and also regulation. So for example, some platforms are currently looking to get an investment or brokerage license where they actually operate. So wanted to know if you could share what are the plans of Mintos regarding those topics, like transparency and regulation.
Sure. So transparency has been a big part of our journey so far already. So we tried our best to put as much possible information out there for the investors to make the information. Having said that, obviously, regulation helps to put it in more standardized framework. So, and ourselves, when it comes to regulation, so we are applying for the investment firm license, which then basically going to mean that we will be fully regulated marketplace, and investors, we also going to repackage the offering, but well, from the investor's perspective, they're still going to buy into the loans. They will just have more specific. We will have actually more specific guidelines what we should disclose in what form and so forth. So at the end of the day, regulation definitely going to help with transparency. Not necessarily in our case that there's going to be kind of much more information out there, so but that it will be more standardized and actually easier to understand for investors perhaps. So regulation is something which I would say is a bit already overdue in our segment, in our sector. So we've been always for the regulation, and we think that with the help of regulation, we will actually be able to do even more and a better job in really bringing this asset class, loans as an asset class, to retail investors and actually making it mainstream. So we are very eager what awaits us with the regulation. So we do expect to get the investment firm license early next year, and then basically transition to operating as a fully regulated marketplace.
Awesome. So let's maybe stay with this question and like the future. Except, as you already said, regulation next year for Mintos. What are maybe the other plans or new features of Mintos that you could share that are coming in the coming years?
That is indeed tied to the permissions, to the licenses, or basically to the regulation. So what we see with the regulation, so we are actually applying for 2 licenses. One is an investment firm license, and the other one is electronic money institution license. So those 2 licenses really gonna help us to reach more customers in the current geographies and also in the new geographies. So we definitely see significantly scaling up the business on both sides of the marketplace, actually, both on the investor side and then on the loan supply side. Also by bringing more wider offering of loans, including loans which are lower risk and lower return loans, so that investors can build more diversified portfolio. So that's definitely what awaits us in the next few years. And then with the help of the license, we are also now branching out and providing new products to our customer base. So when it comes to investment products, so we are very excited about the opportunity which investment firm license gives us. So we can actually provide all sorts of also more traditional investment opportunities. So some of them which we have on the roadmap is ETFs, for instance. So we would provide ETFs as part of the offering on the marketplace. So investors can build a portfolio not only by buying loans, but they also can buy the exchange traded funds, which is rather standardized traditional investment, which we know that investors do hold through other brokers, but we see that actually why not make life easier so that they can hold it in one platform. So that's on investment side investment product side, and the other side is also providing more of just financial products such as Mintos IBAN account. So that's something which we are working on. Is basically Mintos current account in a way, and then Mintos debit card as well is something which we have on the roadmap. So that those 2 is really for investors to get easier access to the money which is not invested on the platform. So those are the things which we can mention now. So we are very excited actually about the coming years. Obviously, 2020 was a bit of kind of slowdown year for many, including us, but we are very enthusiastic to get back to growth with the help of the licenses which we are looking to secure early next year. And while we are on this topic, obviously, so we are also fundraising. So we are fundraising so that we can execute on this roadmap. So we are raising capital from the venture capital firms, but also for the first time in Mintos history, we are also doing a crowdfunding campaign so that we give the opportunity to our community to own part of Mintos shares and basically participate in our journey. So we're gonna launch it on November 17th. So depending on when this goes live, so we perhaps will already have launched the campaign. So with the fundraising, both crowdfunding and venture capital, we definitely see that there is a lot of still and exciting things ahead of us. Even though we have already made good progress today, we are perhaps the largest player in Europe with 45% market share, 340,000 investors. It's a good platform to continue building further, but it's only still the beginning of the journey. So there's still so much things ahead of us that I'm very excited about the future, what it holds for us.
Awesome, sounds very exciting. So now, just to finish this interview, I want to ask you, let's imagine somebody is really getting started with Mintos, right? What would be your, maybe not really technical advice, but more like general advice on how to, like start investing on the platform?
Start small and diversify. That would be what comes to mind. And well, diversify not only within Mintos, but also think on the broader your investment portfolio, so that loans is just one asset perhaps where you should invest. Of course, there are limitations, what is accessible and so forth, but still diversification both on investment portfolio view and your total investment portfolio view, but also within the Mintos. So diversification is definitely and just start small and educate yourself. So there's plenty of materials, the same like what you, Marco, puts out there. So there are good materials, also good videos and so forth. A lot of actually where you can learn about the asset class. So I definitely would also suggest to pick up some of those and educate yourself as a beginner.
Awesome. So just to finish, what are the best ways for somebody who wants to get started today with Mintos? What's the best way to actually get started? Where to get information? What site to visit?
I think the best is really just to head to Mintos website and just register and start small. So nothing beats when you really actually put some money and try to invest and see how it works. So that's the best actually way to learn and get exposure to this asset class. So I would just suggest to start small and then basically the best is just to register on Mintos and start investing, if you ask me.
Okay, awesome. So thank you so much again for coming into this show and answering all those questions. I really think that my listeners will love it. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you, Marco. It was my pleasure. Thanks.
All right, so this is already the end of this interview. I really hope that you enjoyed it. So if you have additional questions about what you heard in this interview, maybe more questions for Mintos or for me about peer-to-peer lending, about investing in general, don't hesitate to leave them all just below the video. Also, in case you want to learn more about Mintos, I put some link just below the video, so you will find a link to my review of Mintos, which is where I update my results with the platform every month, so you can really have up-to-date information. I also put a link directly to Mintos in case you just want to try it out, check out the website, so you will find all of that just below the video. That being said, thank you again so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.